All right, everybody. It looks like we're live on in all of the places. I'm Carol Williams with Williams Immigration, headquartered out of Florida, but work with clients all over the country and all over the globe. I wanted to give you guys some updates with the government shutdown with respect to immigration. And then if you have any questions, some general questions, I'm happy to answer those. Happy to answer those as well. So the updates are these. The government is still shut down, as we know. USCIS is open and processing cases. Department of Labor is not open and not processing immigration cases. So if we need an LCA, if we need a prevailing wage, if we want to know whether our perm application is being processed, they are not. So if you are maybe filing or looking to file or preparing a perm or an H-1B, you need a prevailing wage, you need an LCA. We're not going to be able to get those right now because DOL is shut down. DOL is not a fee-funded agency, so DOL doesn't take in filing fees for the work that it does with respect to immigration. They get their money from Congress, so without an appropriations bill, without a budget, they don't have money to operate. Because USCIS is a fee-based agency, meaning it operates using money from the filing fees from applicants, they do have money, and so they are up and running. And then Department of State, as we know, oversees all of the consulates and the embassies outside of the U.S. They operate, part of their operating budget also comes from the fees that they intake from the applicants. So Department of State with respect to immigration issues, so visa, NVC, they are open and doing business for now. So we will see what continues to happen. If there are any updates, I will give them to you in terms of the government shutdown and how that's going to affect your cases. USCIS just released I think it's quarterly sort of stats, and very, very broadly, we are seeing what we call a front log. Those are cases that have not been opened, haven't been, they're not even in the queue to be processed. We have seen a increase in also the backlog. So cases that have been opened, receipted in, just start moving. So we're seeing the backlog get longer. So now we've got a front log, now we've got a backlog. So we'll see what continues to develop with that. I don't foresee the government shutdown helping the agency get through the backlog or get through the front log. I could be wrong. I just don't see it happening. So I think the backlog will continue. I've been saying that for a while, and now that we have a front log, that that it's just, it is what it is. We're gonna work through it, and that's kind of what I have in terms of updates. There's some proposed legislation for H's, weighting them differently than they're currently weighted. As of right now, it's proposed, so we'll kind of keep an eye on that, and then I'll update you if it gets to be a fairly significant situation. But as of right now, it's just proposed. What questions do y'all have for me? I am happy to answer some questions to the extent that I can. Keep in mind, while I am an immigration attorney, I'm not your immigration attorney, so I can't give you specific case advice. But I can certainly, see if I can help you kind of sort your way through the system and educate you on the immigration system as we have it, and what may help. Let's see, and I'm loving all the hearts, guys. I appreciate it. Let's see what we have for questions. Oh, the other thing is time frames, timing, processing times. USCIS's website has processing times. I talk about this all the time. You'll see that for the employment-based cases, instead of looking under, or when you look under the office, that is processing your case, you'll see that it says SCOPS, which stands for Service Center Operations. So what they've done is, instead of looking at processing times for each individual service center, and again, this is for employment-based cases, they've aggregated the processing times for all five of those service centers, and given one processing time. And part of that is because cases are transferred between service centers, so that cases can get processed faster, frankly. And so it just kind of made more sense for them, is what they have told us. So it will show they're starting to update those processing times. I've noticed those over the past couple of weeks, and noticed one in particular today as I was checking the status update timelines for a client. So just keep that in mind. There's nothing wrong if you only get one option to check. Let's see here. What do we have for questions? Thanks for the follow. I appreciate that. Is the time for your case accurate? Neshi B is asking. I'm assuming that you mean the timing on the website. So the processing times on the website are representative of according to the USCIS, representative of 80% of the same case type across the agency. So some cases are going to be a little bit shorter, some cases are going to be a little bit longer, but the processing times represent about 80% of that same case type. I have found them, for the cases that I work on, to be pretty in line with what we're seeing in terms of actual processing times. So sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's not such a good thing. But yeah, I've seen them. To me, they seem to be pretty in line with the cases that we're working on. My husband's I-130 with NBC was approved since 2022 and no interview yet. He's in Nigeria. So could be a couple reasons for that. Could be the preference category that he is in. Once the I-130 gets approved, there is a wait time before it gets sent to NBC based on the priority date. There's a whole process with NBC. If you are not documentarily qualified, NBC will not work with the consulate to get an interview scheduled. So those are two kind of the bigger things that I generally see when there's been a lag time between the I-130 being approved and the NBC sort of kicking in and reaching out and beginning to collect documents. If you have correspondence from NBC, then the best course of action is to look at that correspondence and see why they are, see whatever that last correspondence was. If you fulfilled everything that NBC wants, or you think you have, then I would reach out to NBC. Let's see here. I have DACA and clean entrance. Can my permanent resident mom petition for me? So my office doesn't really interact and handle cases that are DACA related. So the short answer is I don't know. I'm probably not the best person to ask that question of. But if you talk to a lawyer and, I would work with that lawyer and follow their instructions. Someone is saying that your case processing times went from 18 months to 5 months. Again, I don't know what kind of case you have. That could absolutely be the case. I know on the employment-based side, I've seen the processing times of cases go down significantly. So it could absolutely be accurate. Eileen 757 is asking, I have removal proceedings. Can I terminate it because I'm married to a U.S. citizen? I don't know. My office does not handle anything about removal defense. So whenever there is a removal defense overlap in cases, I bring in other I bring in other attorneys who handle removal defense all day, every day, who can help me with the nuances of removal defense. Removal defense is very, very nuanced. It's very, very complicated, just like the rest of immigration. So I am not that attorney that's going to guess and sort of, not know the answer. So I don't know. My office does not handle any removal cases. So when there's an overlap, I always bring in somebody else to help my clients. And that's something I think that's something really, really important to kind of point out. Not all immigration attorneys handle the same types of cases, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? I know plenty of attorneys that choose not to handle employment-based immigration cases. A super niche within immigration is overseas adoptions. So I only know a handful of attorneys that handle those types of cases. And so it's not unusual for immigration attorneys to work together to move forward one person's particular issue. So they can sort of put their heads together and combine their knowledge, especially if we've got a family-based case that has a deportation aspect of it, or an asylum aspect of it, or there's an employment-based case that has asylum or deportation pieces of the puzzle. So that is something that I do often. I chat with colleagues and get their advice often on cases where those issues overlap. A 601A, does USCIS check every little detail? So USCIS checks details on absolutely all of the cases filed. A 601 is no different. So the answer to that question is yes. USCIS checks details on every single case it files. They run background checks. That's why people have to take biometrics. So it is always in your best interest to be honest in your applications. If you had some memory lapses, if there are some errors in your application, for certain applications, there are natural times during that application process where you can correct those errors. But yeah, if you think there are errors in your 601, I would have a conversation with the person that helped you prepare that 601. And then they can guide you through how to go about amending those errors. And to be clear, some errors are going to be bigger than others, right? Typos here and there happen. We're human. But if you're missing sort of like a whole portion of your story, or if you didn't list your children on an application, but now you want to list them on your green card application, so not all absences of information are treated the same. So just be aware of that as well. Normie, you are quite welcome. I received my FOIA, but the results, they sent it to NVC. I don't quite understand. Your FOIA results should be sent to you. Whoever requested them. So I don't understand if you're saying, I don't know if you're trying to say that they sent your FOIA results to NVC. I don't quite understand what you're asking. How long after the interview? Brian 78 is asking, do you get your results? So that depends. Nobody likes to hear lawyers say that, but it's true. So it depends on a couple things. It depends on the workload of the office. It depends on the type of case. It depends on the officer, and it depends on the internal process that has to happen after your interview. So sometimes an officer will say, yes, I'm going to recommend you for approval. Sometimes an officer, especially if it's a citizenship case, the officer can approve you there. And sometimes I've had clients that have been sworn in on the same day of their interview. So it really depends on what's happening in the office. oftentimes people think, okay, I've had my interview, I'm ready to go, and they hear nothing. So understand that a lot has to happen in the background once your interview is over. The work on your file isn't over just because you've had your interview. So it really just depends on what's going on in the office. And believe you me, I'm not the most patient person. So I would like to have, I would like to have all same day approvals, but that doesn't always happen. So sometimes it just depends on that office in particular and what's happening in the background. You're saying they sent the FOIA results to NVC. I have no idea why they would do that. I'm assuming that was an error, but your FOIA results shouldn't generally go. If you request a FOIA, the results shouldn't be sent to the NVC. So I'm not quite sure why that happened. Somebody could have misunderstood what you were requesting. I don't know. Filing adjustment of status, arrested and charges dismissed, qualify for petty offense exception. Should I be okay? I have no idea. On its face, probably, but without actually looking at the charges and the law behind the charges, I have no idea. I have no idea if it actually qualifies for petty theft exemption. If you've spoken with a lawyer and that lawyer has told you that you qualify for a petty theft exemption and that you should be okay, then and that lawyer has looked at the charging documents all the way through final disposition, then I would go by I would go by the advice that attorney gave you. But I don't know, without actually looking at documents. When there is a criminal history, it is super important to have someone look at the documents from the initial charging document all the way to the final disposition and everything in between. Because there could be hidden landmines within that. NVC, Crazy Candy, I kind of love that name. NVC sent my case back to USCIS, and I have no clue what to do next. I got married. Why is my case at NVC? I don't know, right? Like, I don't know why they sent it back. There was probably some communication. Maybe you didn't get it. Maybe it went to your lawyer, but there was communication as to why they sent your case. Why NVC sent your case back to USCIS. Sometimes NVC will send it back because you didn't keep in touch with them within a year. Sometimes they send it back because they are recommending that your underlying case be withdrawn. And then NVC doesn't have the ability to do that. And so they have to send it back to USCIS, can ask USCIS to do it. If that's the case, USCIS will be sending you some sort of correspondence as to why they have the case. But NVC should have told you something. What to do next? I would reach out to an attorney, do a consultation, and let them look at all the documents. All the correspondence. There is something in that correspondence that tells us why they are sending your case back. So yeah, that is definitely unfortunate, but I would schedule a consult and have someone look at all of the documents. Often when I do consults with folks and they come to me with I don't know what happened, or where do I go here? I need to see everything that they have. I need to see what was filed initially and all the correspondence back and forth between someone and USCIS. There's often a treasure trove of information in there that somebody just who maybe doesn't do immigration or doesn't do that kind of case doesn't see, and maybe doesn't fully understand. Um, can I consult with you? Absolutely. Just go hit the link in the bio. Absolutely. More than happy to help. And thank you for the heart. I appreciate it. 2 attempts to enter the U.S. They were voluntary returns. Should I apply for citizenship? No idea. That is something we'd have to really sit down and sort of go through. Yeah, I don't know. We'd have to see what, if anything, is in the system. I'd want to do a FOIA, figure out what the government has said about your entrances, and how many there are. What so I don't know. That's a whole. I have Your question brings up more questions than I have even sort of very basic information to provide. If a new citizen based on asylum, can you visit his or her home country? That's a really good question, and one I don't know the answer to off the top of my head. I will say this about asylum, however. Asylum is granted because you made a representation to the federal government that said, for some reason, whatever your individual reason is, you are afraid to go back to your home country. So I would have to understand why now you want to go back to your home country. A place that the federal government has said, yes, we believe you. We believe that, you've got this fear of going home. I don't know if once you become a U.S. citizen, that going home no longer presents a problem for your immigration status. That I don't know. I've honestly never come across that in my practice, so I don't know the answer to you. But I would not. I would reach out and have someone do that research before I booked a flight to go back to the country where I told the federal government I was afraid to go back to. But again, I think that's incredibly fact specific. So I don't know. Can an interview, James Bond, I do like that name, is asking, can an interview for marriage-based green card be canceled after more evidence is uploaded? Absolutely. So it can be canceled and rescheduled. Sure. I mean, there's plenty of reasons why the agency, let me put it this way, there are plenty of reasons that have zero to do with the documents that they have on hand as to why the agency would cancel and then potentially reschedule your interview. Plenty that have zero, they're all administrative reasons that I can think of off the top of my head that have zero to do with your application. If they canceled it after you uploaded more evidence, that could be a complete and utter coincidence. I don't know that that's. I don't know that I would say that is like a red flag or something to be worried about. There's a lot happening right now in immigration, and immigration is run by humans, right? So humans are going to take vacation, right? Like honestly, like your case could have been canceled, or your interview could have been canceled just because somebody went on vacation, and they've got to reschedule those. They didn't have enough officers to to sort of move that workload around. Which if that's the case, that's hard on the outside because they're not going to tell you that. How long to hear from USCIS after responding to an RFE by mail? There is no specific time. It depends on the office itself. if it was post-interview and you filed your I-130, you filed your 485, really depends on the workload that is currently on that officer's desk. Also depends on the workload that is on that officer's supervisor's desk. So whoever has to receipt in the RFE and then get it back to the officer, it's a process. So there's a lot of logistics that happen on the back end. And honestly, nobody ever wants to hear me say this, but I think it's so important for people to understand. There's a lot of logistics that happen within any government agency. And so while I would love to be able to tell you, you'll definitely hear back from them in 2 weeks, 2 months, 6 months, whatever it is. I think people just want some sort of clarity and some sort of number, and I get that. But there really isn't. There really isn't. There is some clarity on the employment side. If a case is filed using an expedited method, usually we'll hear back within a certain number of business days. But on the family side, that clarity and that timeline just doesn't exist, unfortunately. So that, I mean, it it's not pleasant, I will say, but it just, I tell my clients, we just got to pack a little bit of extra patience. There are sometimes if I know I'm getting an RFE at the end of an interview, I will ask the officer, once we respond to this, how long do you think it will take? I think that's a perfectly fair question. Some officers will answer, some officers won't. But for the officer that answers, it gives myself and my client a teeny bit of clarity. I certainly am not going to hold them to that number, to that date, but it does provide some clarity. So unfortunately, there is no specific timeline by which they are going to respond after an RFE. Now, if we're talking like 8 years, 6 years, that kind of thing, that's a bit of an issue. But if it's maybe like a month, not that doesn't concern me as much. Someone is asking me if I am an attorney. I am indeed an immigration attorney. My I-130 and 45 got approved without any RFE or interview. That's fantastic. Was it because I sent in a lot of evidence? No, that is not why your case got approved. Your case got approved because you sent in good evidence that told your immigration story well. That's why your case got approved without an interview. I talk all the time about sending in good information, good documents. Doesn't matter if I say that your marriage or that your background, your case, whatever, should be approved. They don't care what I think. They don't care what I have to say. They do not. As an outside lawyer, they absolutely do not care about my opinions on my clients, right? They know that I am being hired to help my client through this process, right? My job is to request documents from my clients and send them to the agency that I think will help any officer approve the case. So, there were, during the last presidential administration, part of how they got through the backlog was to waive interviews for cases that had really solid evidence, really solid documents. It was not, the person with, and it has never been that the person with the most documents, like the largest number of documents, gets approved. That's not the case. The agency wants to see good documents that really speak to your individual case. So if you were able to do that and you got it approved without an interview, kudos. The days of no interviews are kind of gone, right? They're kind of gone, which makes me a little sad, but they're gone for now. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's not about the number of documents. It's about how good the documents are. So that's something I talk to my to my clients about often. 5 really good pieces of documentation are better than 50 so pieces of documentation. What other questions do y'all have for me? Will sending a child's birth certificate be good evidence for a 751? It can be. It absolutely can be, right? It shows that it is one piece of evidence that shows that you all are currently in a relationship. Now, it's not just going to be the child's birth certificate that they look at, right? Because you can have your child's birth certificate, and you can be in a horrible marriage, like about to get a divorce, right? You can file your 751 after you've been divorced, but you still have a child, right? So does a birth certificate help? Sure. It is not the only piece of documentation that an officer is going to want to see. So that really goes to good documents, but yeah, you want to, but sure. Would I submit a client's birth certificate for a 751? Yeah, of course. If someone works without their authorization, will that prevent them from getting their residency? It could in fact prove to be a stumbling block, for sure. We'd have to look and see what's going on. We'd have to see, is this person an immediate relative? Is this person part of, does this person qualify for a green card under the preference categories? An immediate relative, unauthorized work is forgiven. If you're in a preference category, it is not. So we have to see what provisions are there in the law that we can use based on your individual circumstances to see if we can get the government to waive unauthorized work. So yes, short answer is yes, unauthorized work could negatively impact a green card application, but it does not always negatively impact a green card application. My nephew has his residency from Cuba. How long does he have to wait to apply for his U.S. citizenship? Well, U.S. citizenship, before you can apply for U.S. citizenship, you have to show that you are a U.S. citizen. Yeah, sorry. You have to show that you're a green card holder. If you're married to a U.S. citizen, then you have to have been a green card holder for 3 years. If you are married, or if you're not married to a U.S. citizen, then you have to show that you've been a green card holder for 5 years. I'm not quite sure how residency in Cuba plays into that. I've not seen that be an issue in my practice. Let's see here. What other questions do y'all have for me? Hold on, I missed the scroller. And we're also live, y'all, on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok this evening. And Mondays I go live on Monday mornings, bright and early Monday morning. I go live on LinkedIn. The LinkedIn lives are mostly employment-based chats, though. What proof can be used if, these are probably the last two I'll answer this evening. What proof can be used if wife, who is the applicant, is currently pregnant? Proof of, I'm guessing, a green card application. So proof that the wife is pregnant doesn't I mean, it's not the one thing that's going to get an application approved. Um, you know, you want to show the officer, and I'm assuming this is a spousal case, but you want to show the officer that this is a valid marriage, that the marriage wasn't entered into solely for a green card. Um, and so you want to provide documents that show your life together. Um, Being pregnant is not going to be the only thing. Now, were if there were problems, if there were troubles, if there were challenges getting pregnant, and a couple has used or gotten pregnant through the use of IVF or some other assisted method, and the doctor writes a note. I've seen that happen. Talking about the challenges that this couple had getting pregnant, and now they are currently pregnant. That is very, very different in terms of documentation than simply my spouse is pregnant. Um, so again, it's sort of weighting of the evidence, but you want to show that you're in a valid marriage. Do you all live together? Are you paying this? Are you paying bills, or is your stuff going in the same household? Like, what do you do in your free time? It's about explaining to the immigration service, telling them your individual marriage and relationship story. Um, so. Let's see here. Filed a 751 jointly, but have since divorced. What documents to turn in for a waiver? So when you're filing a 751, usually the agency likes to see that it's filed together, but the agency is never going to tell you or require that people stay in a bad marriage. So they're never going to say, you can't get divorced. So for 751, there's an automatic waiver built into the process. They acknowledge that people don't always stay married. They acknowledge divorce happens. The 751 needs to show that as of the time you got married, that you intended to stay married, that you entered into a valid relationship. So it is about presenting to USCIS. One, you need to present a divorce decree. That's number one. But two, evidence that y'all had a marriage that was real, and unfortunately it didn't work out. But there is no magical list of documents. So really really for a divorce waiver case, the magical document is a divorce decree, right? Like if you say that we're divorced or in the process of getting divorced, they're going to want to see a divorce decree. But other than that, it is documents that tell your individual story. What was happening in your marriage, why did it end, that sort of thing. And I find that when I help clients with 751s and there was a divorce, sometimes that's really hard. That's really hard for a client to talk about that, to talk about, why their marriage failed, why their marriage didn't work. Some people have a lot of blame and guilt and shame and all the things around a marriage not working. But I often tell my clients that one, I need them to tell me the things that they don't tell anybody outside the four walls of their home. That is usually where a lot of the good documents and good evidence lies, right? And it's also gets my clients used to talking about it, because they're going to have to go into an interview and they're going to have to talk about it. And so as hard as that is sometimes, we want a good result. And sometimes that means talking about hard things that happen inside of a marriage. And sometimes, sometimes my clients wind up going to counseling as a part of this whole process. Divorce can be particularly hard on people. So that is sometimes not so pleasant. But yeah, it's really about telling the story of your actual relationship through documents, which is not going to be the same for everybody. So y'all, it is almost 8 o'clock my time. I'm on Eastern Standard Time, so I am going to sign off. I've got like 3 more emails I need to send before I can sign off for the evening. But if y'all want to talk about any of these issues around, sort of surrounding your own case more in depth, you are welcome to schedule a consult with my office. We're happy to chat with you. You can do that through the link. And this has been great. I will see you guys back next week. Usually I go live at night, Monday through Thursday, around 7 p.m.-ish Eastern Standard Time. I know I've got some events next week. I think I've got 2 events. I think Tuesday and Wednesday, maybe Wednesday, Thursday. So I won't be able to be live all days next week, but usually I'm live Monday through Thursday, 7 p.m.-ish Eastern Standard Time. So this has been great. I am attorney Carol Williams. We work with folks all over the country, all 50 states, Washington, D.C., as well as internationally. So happy to help you. We help families and businesses navigate our U.S. immigration system. So I will chat with y'all next week. Have a good night, and thanks for all the great questions. I really enjoyed chatting with y'all. Bye.